moving over to comments now on the next video, which is video 22. So one of you says, neurodivergence is such a nebulous catch-all term, it is utterly pointless. I kind of wish the hyper-able autism isn't a disability type would stick to calling themselves neurodiverse, neurodivergent, and leave the terms autistic, ADHD, etc. for people actually affected by these disorders. My lungs didn't develop optimally due to being premature, so I now have asthma, which I need to take medication for. My brain didn't develop optimally either, which has resulted in autism and ADHD. That doesn't negate my value as a human being, and nor does it exempt a decent society from making changes to make things easier, but I'm not going to pretend that being autistic, etc. are simply neutral differences. So next one of you says, didn't like the book. They didn't like the book, and what they say might as well have been cloaked eugenics. That's quite a strong opinion. Obviously, you really did not like the book. Yeah, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say what they were saying is cloaked eugenics, but there are so many. I don't think. To be fair to Chapman, I don't think he's arguing for a form of eugenics, but I feel that there are so many contradictions and hypocrisies in a book. There are parts that I agree with, but I just feel that its argument is very simplest and reductionistic. You know, we might be on the same ground on many ways, and I'm sure we'd agree on many ways, in many ways. I mean, he is on the left, to doing fair, but I just don't agree with this whole postmodern stuff. I really don't agree with it, and I feel that although these people have good intentions, I just don't think they're doing us a good service. I feel that ultimately, I don't know, it's just not the right way to make change, I don't think. This kind of, it's like an extreme social model, which I disagree with. Anyway, moving over to the next comment now. On comorbids, researchers have found a loop of 60 plus genes that are related to autism, ADHD, bipolar, schizophrenia. Yes, I've heard of this as well, the way that basically there aren't any genes for autism. There's no such thing as an autism gene. All there are is, basically there's just genes, they call them vulnerability genes. And every single person has these genes. You know, these genes that code for proteins that, are involved in the development of brain areas to do with socialisation, executive functioning, all of that. We all have these genes. But the vulnerability genes are common variants within those genes, where the genes have mutated to result in a slightly different configuration in the brain. But obviously that slight difference can result in massive problems downstream. It's quite complex, but so we talk about vulnerability genes because these variations in genes that everyone has these genes, but not everyone carries the genes that have been mutated or the variations, but there are many of these genes around. I can't remember how many there are a lot of them anyway, that have these common genetic variants or common variations, and they're very common and widely dispersed in the population, so many people will carry these variants, these variations, these mutated genes. They have mutated somewhere, sometime in prior generations. That'll take a whole other video in itself. I do mean at some point to actually do a video on the genetics behind autism and ADHD, so I find it very interesting. But many people carry these these genetic variations without having autism, without having ADHD. Some of them might just carry a few of these genetic variations, and they might have, say, a few symptoms or few traits, if you like, but nothing amounting to impairment. And it depends on how many you inherit and how they interact with one another, and also the environment, because a lot of it is epigenetics as well. It's not as simple, you carry these genetic variants, therefore you get autism. It's not as simple as that. A lot of factors involved. And they're not autism genes specifically. They don't code for autism. All they do is increase your risk of having autism. And there are many, many, many of these genes. It's not like just one gene. There are like many, 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 many genes. And depending what ones you get, that could increase your risk not just for autism, but for quite a number of these other disorders as well, which have been shown to be genetically linked to autism. Autism isn't even one disorder anyway, so it depends what type of autism is running in your family, or what type of genes are in your family. Because some of these genes will increase your risk not just for autism, but for other mental disorders as well. But it really does depend what risk genes you inherit, because there aren't just, as I say, there's many, many, many of them that can all potentially result in autism. Different types of autism, depending on what ones you get in your gene pool. But yeah. This whole idea that autism is isolated from other disorders is just not correct. It's very interrelated with a whole host of other psychiatric disorders, which is why autistic people often have more than one disorder, depending on what genes you get. Okay, pure autism is very rare. So, next comment now. Autistic people can want friends and feel excluded because they struggle to get them. However, it's also true that autistics are more comfortable with their own company. However, even autistics who choose not to have relationships can find themselves excluded because they don't have the same reservoir of experiences as those who are socially connected. So next comment now. A study has shown that children from more affluent areas are 80% more likely to receive an autism diagnosis than those from more disadvantaged ones. Working class kids do get diagnosed, but the impetus often comes from the outside the family. In the middle classes, diagnoses are chosen. In working classes, they are often imposed. So that's a very good point, thank you. Next one, or rather the same commenter actually. One of the things I find frustrating when interacting with others is their focus on their relationships. So they talk a great deal about their partner, children, social events, etc. I can't respond in kind. I'd rather talk about issues and interests. But most people either find those things boring or too sensitive, e.g. politics, so I keep off those topics, all of which means there's very little material to work with. Do I find that too? Thank you. The next comment. I would really welcome a video from you on the whole neuroaffirmative approach. I'm concerned about the idea of the neurodiversity movement paradigm becoming the orthodoxy among therapists, and your experience of being told to go away and rethink your approach to your own autism is bordering on gaslighting. The whole autism is only a difference, not a deficit idea. It's a dogma disconnected from both observable reality and also the direct lived experience of many autistic people. If I were told by a therapist that my autism is a neutral or positive difference, it would make me feel very down and inadequate, because then I would get really caught up worrying why I struggle so much. It's actually acknowledging that autism is inherently a disability that helps me accept and make peace with my difficulties. You also go on to say, I totally agree about the sensory stuff. It would be impossible to create an environment that takes account of everyone's sensory difficulties. I've been in a support group on Zoom where one person regulated themselves by standing up frequently and walking around. I found that really distracting. Whilst I try not to, I tend to rock back and forth quite a bit when I'm on online groups, and I'm sure that must be distracting to some others. And you go on to say, I'm actually surprised at just how much some ADHD advocates have embraced the neurodiversity movement, such as one of the UK's ADHD charities, ADHD Foundation, which has gone so far as to call itself a neurodiversity charity. It seems utterly counterproductive because ADHD is already treated with scepticism, so adopting NDM paradigm, which itself trivialises disorders, is hardly going to help. Okay, so I'll finish there. So thank you very much for all your comments, and I will be doing another video very soon. So thank you for watching.